KOCT program underwriters are not affiliated with the City of Oceanside. This program is underwritten in part by Waste Management of North County in Oceanside. We are dedicated to serving customers and community as a safe, comprehensive service provider, a good corporate citizen, and a responsible environmental steward. Think green. Think Waste Management. You are watching KOCT's North County Roundtable. On today's show, we have Board of Supervisors candidates for District Number 5.
Welcome to KOCT's North County Roundtable. I'm your host, Davy. On this special June primary edition of North County Roundtable, we'll be speaking with candidates for the San Diego County 5th District Supervisors seat. Tonight's format will begin with a 1-minute self-introduction followed by questions and answers. We've asked our candidates to keep their responses to a minute or so we can get in as many questions as possible. We'll take a break after the half-hour mark, followed by more questions and brief closing statements. The candidates have been seated in alphabetical order, but we will cut back and forth between the candidates for camera reasons. We'll begin with Jacqueline Arsivaud. 1-minute self-introduction. Jacqueline?
Good evening. My name is Jacqueline Arsivaud, and I am running because I think we have a historic opportunity to change the very direction of this county. After 24 years of the current leadership, public trust in the institution has been eroded with backdoor access for developers and dire consequences for the rest of the residents. We have a chance to change that direction, to protect the residents in terms of public safety and quality of life.
Thank you, Jacqueline. Jerry.
Hi, I'm Jerry Kern. Hopefully I don't have to need much of an introduction. I've been here several times before on KOCT, and Kent and Tom, thanks for putting this on. Most people know me because I've been a 12-year council member on the City of Oceanside. City of Oceanside is the largest full-service city in North County. We have our own police, fire, harbor, airport. So I've been involved in those issues that the county will be involved in. And I think I've learned a lot in the last 12 years. I can take that ability that I've learned and the skill set that I have acquired over the 12 years being your representative on the Oceanside City Council and take that to the county.
Thank you. Jim.
Hi, I'm Mayor Jim Desmond. I'm the mayor of the beautiful city of San Marcos. I've been mayor for 12 years in San Marcos, and I'm termed out at the end of this year. Bill Horn, our county supervisor, is also termed out. And I want to take all the great things that we've done in the city of San Marcos and apply it to the county. I want to make sure that the county is safe, spends your taxpayer dollars wisely, and maintains the infrastructure that we have. We want to make sure that our police and our fire departments have the resources they need to fight crime and fire. I want to make sure that we spend your tax dollars wisely by prioritizing your dollars, not overspending, and having strong reserves. I also want to ensure that our infrastructure is kept up, because the longer you let it go, the worse off it's going to be. I'd be honored to be your county supervisor. I bring a lot from the past, or a lot from the city of San Marcos, where we've always balanced our budget. We did pension reform, health care reform, and we also have provided our taxpayers with balanced budgets and strong reserves. Thank you.
Thank you. Michelle.
Hi, I'm Michelle Gomez, and I currently serve as a commissioner on both the Oceanside Housing Commission and the San Diego County Commission on the Status of Women and Girls. As a longtime community advocate, I have been serving working families for a very long time and standing up for women, homeless children, veterans and military families, elderly, and for our public health and safety and well-being. In being elected to this office, I would focus on our affordable housing crisis, our homeless epidemic, which has resulted in a Hepe outbreak, protecting our pristine lands, and also fire protection. Our environment is one of the biggest things that we need to focus on, along with affordable housing and homelessness. I look forward to speaking with all of you and having you learn more about us tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. Jacqueline, When Supervisor Horn was last on this program a month or two ago, one of the things that he talked about as one of his accomplishments was the Board of Supervisors in the county amassing quite considerable budget surplus. Right. That amounts to, as I understand, several $billion, I believe. That is a considerable amount of money. That's taxpayer money. Should the practice of hoarding that surplus be continued, or is that a frugal practice?
So I think, first of all, the current board needs to be commended for what they have done in terms of our credit rating, and that is part of having that reserve. The County of San Diego is one of few counties in the state of California that have a AAA rating, and they've done that through the reserve. We do have 48% of our budget is held in reserve versus about 15% for the rest of the county, so there's certainly room there to return some of that money in terms of quality of life improvements to the citizens of the county. I would commend some of the moves that have been done in the past, like the $25 million that have been invested by the current board into affordable housing on county properties. And I would encourage the future board, of which I'm hoping to be a part, to continue those one-time capital investments in, from the reserves, as opposed to creating new entitlements.
Mm-hmm. Jerry.
Well, my philosophy of government, that we're in the service delivery business. That's what we do. We deliver services to people. They give us their hard-earned tax dollars, and we spend it on roads and public safety. I commend the board of actually putting money aside, but at a certain point, you have to spend that money on the people that give you the money. The idea that, part of this Hep A outbreak and the homeless issue, they had money sitting aside. They scrambled at the end. They spent a lot of money to try to remedy the Hep A thing, but they had the money there beforehand. They're not very proactive. So I would like to see some of that reserve spent on servicing the people. My philosophy in government, if you're not going to use the money, give it back to the people that gave it to you. It would look better in your checkbook than in the county's checkbook. That's not to say they shouldn't have a healthy reserve, and that's not to say that they should keep money for a rainy day, but just accumulate reserve to accumulate reserve doesn't do the citizens any good because they don't provide services with it, and it doesn't do you any good because your money's sitting down in the county.
All right. Jim.
Well, thank you. Actually, the number that I'm aware of as the number of reserves that the county has is about 750 million. And actually, that's about right, because it takes about 2 months. You want to have in your reserves, I think, for any entity, to have about 2 months of operating dollars. It costs about $320,000 a month to fully operate the county. If we get a large catastrophe that takes place, and you can't calendar when the next fire is going to be or when the next earthquake is going to be, you have to keep money on reserve so you've got money on hand for those types of emergencies. And I think 2 months is a little over 2 months is what they have right now for emergency dollars. And yes, it can be used for some other things, but I think you should have a minimum of 2 months worth of emergency dollars on reserve. We have that in the city of San Marcos. We actually have about 3 or 4 months worth of reserves. Do you have to have money set aside just in case of the major catastrophes? And actually, I think it's prudent and fiscally responsible.
Okay.
I think that we need to be fiscally responsible and we need to watch tax dollars. However, I do believe that a 49% reserve is a little excessive. Most counties are operating on 20 to 30%, and I think that those reserve dollars really should be invested into our affordable housing problem, our homeless problem, getting people off the streets, as well as putting money into our home and healthcare service workers. We need to make sure that we are giving our county employees cost of living increases, we're filling vacancies appropriately, and making sure that they're paid properly. And I think that reserve could cover all of that and then still have plenty of reserves left over for our rating.
Jacqueline, the San Diego, Voice of San Diego has said that, reported that there is a considerable underfunding of the San Diego County pension system. Given that we have some considerable reserves, are you concerned about our approach to funding that pension obligation?
So I think, if I'm not mistaken, that the situation with the county pension system is actually better than in many other cities, including the city of San Diego. In other words, the percentage of reserves in the county is fairly healthy compared to others. I think that it's an obligation we have to those people who've chosen to work in public service, often at a reduced rate versus working in the private sector, and so as such, we need to make sure that the pension is there when they are ready to retire. And I would not be. I wouldn't think that we would want to use the reserves, the county reserves, the rainy day fund, to fund the pensions.
Thank you. Jerry?
Well, the problem was that they promised the pension to these employees, and rightly so, and then the county didn't fund the program. So the idea that the deficit piled up. So I think it's a long-term problem. They have to get back on track. They have to fund the pension system completely. I don't think using reserves would be appropriate to fund a pension program. But there's different ways to do that. If you can take some of those reserves and they're earning interest, the city of Oceanside, we have what we call a 115 account. That the idea we take some of our reserves, we set it aside, and the interest from that reserve account actually goes to help pay down our PERS account. I think Sandag did a 115 account or added to their 115 account last week. So that Sandag has that issue, and they're addressing it that way. I think the county probably needs to do something like that on a long-term basis to set some of that reserve money aside to accumulate money for the pension. But the pension system is going to have to stand on its own. It's going to have to be something that the county really addresses going forward.
Okay. Jim?
Well, thanks. I think, the pension issue is a huge issue facing the county and just about every other entity in the state. And it needs to be addressed. But I think one of the issues is, the formulas just haven't worked here lately, especially with the volatility of the stock market here in the recent past. And I think the formulas have been being changed slowly, but that's still the expectation rate of right now the pension system is to earn 7%, over an average period of time. And it just hasn't happened, particularly since like 2008. It's picking up a little bit more, but I think the 115 plans are a good plan to set money aside, so actually the county keeps control of it instead of it going just into the pension fund. And that way, those monies can be used in the future for pension costs to build down or buy down the unfunded liability. So I think there are many different tools in the toolbox that can be used, but we definitely need to address the pensions in the near term to make sure the monies are on hand, and I'd rather keep them on hand at the county as opposed to going into the pool.
Okay, thank you. Michelle?
Using reserves for pensions, I don't believe, is the right way to go about things, but I definitely think that we need to look at how we're going to fund it going forward, and we need to put concrete plans in place.
Okay. One of the issues that has come up of late is dealing with the Hep A outbreak. It was somebody here said that the county came into action somewhat late. Are there additional steps that the county ought to be taking in these kind of public health matters? Jacqueline?
Well, certainly with the Hep A outbreak and the fact that it spread so fast in the homeless community, I think it's a bigger issue, and one of the first things that can be done is make sure that we take care of the homeless population and specifically house them. I really think that the strategy of housing first, where we make sure that we have solutions for homeless people to, instead of running out of a voucher program after a month or living in tents, that they are actually housed in safe conditions, will go a long way to preventing these health issues and these epidemics as we have known. So I do believe that that's where the county again can use some of, as they have started to do, use some of the reserves to build housing that can be permanent housing for the homeless, as well as the wraparound services that go with it.
Okay. Jerry?
Yeah, the Hep A outbreak, I think, took them by surprise, and that shouldn't have. They realized that they had a problem, and they threw money at it at the end instead of thinking beforehand of what to do with the homeless population. About 4 years ago, I actually instituted the homeless outreach team here in Oceanside, that we've actually met people, try to get them off the street. We found if you get somebody within the first 6 months of homelessness, we can actually get them connected to services. Once they go past that year mark, it's very difficult to reach those people, because usually those people with the year mark, there's underlying causes. There's chronic mental illness or drug abuse. So the idea that, yeah, we need to house them. I don't think housing first is the end all to be all. I think you need different prongs, different ways to approach this issue. Solutions for Change is a great way to do this. But they lost funding because the federal government put all their money in one basket in housing first. So they actually added to the problem instead of helping fix it.
Okay. Jim?
Well, thank you. The homeless issue and the hepatitis A issue is definitely, had to be dealt with, and unfortunately it led to that hepatitis A outbreak to really kind of wake some people up. But I think there definitely needs to be more collaboration sooner and earlier between the county and with the cities, particularly the city of San Diego. The county actually, a third of our budget, a third of our $5 billion budget, it goes to Health and Human Services. So then the county has the programs available to help people get off the streets and get into those programs, but you can't administer those programs to people that are living in tents. So housing definitely has to be part of the solution. But you got to remember, this isn't just a county problem. This is a statewide problem, and I think the California legislature has to step in and help us out with this issue. They let a lot of people out of jail with no means and no help to help them once they got out on the streets. They also passed laws that allow shoplifting up to $900 a day, and it's just a ticket or a misdemeanor. They also allow people to squat and live on the sidewalks, and you can't remove them. So I think this is a statewide problem. The legislature needs to step in. The county definitely needs to do its share, but it needs to be a collaborative effort statewide, and I don't think the county can fix it alone.
Okay. Michelle?
San Diego County was ground zero for this hep outbreak that spread all the way to Northern California. I don't believe the county stepped in soon enough to address the problem, which led to it spreading all the way to Northern California, which turned deadly and hospitalized many. I think that we need to address the homeless issue. We need to find housing. We need to put them in housing first, then treat the mental illness, then treat the drug dependency, or whatever those issues are that lead to chronic homelessness. The other part of that is that we need to start investing in job placement and job training for these homeless people so that we can really fix the root cause of all of these problems.
Okay. Supervisor Horn was opposed to updates in the county's general plan. What's your opinion of the plan as it is currently written?
So the general plan is an effort that took 13 years, $18 million of your taxpayer dollars, and was a collaborative effort between the building industry, the environmental interests, communities, and staff. I was part of that effort towards the end. And a lot of very difficult decisions had to be made as part of the general plan. Basically, the principle is that we put the housing growth, the growth that comes from population growth, where it belongs. We put it away from high fire danger zones. We put it where there is infrastructure in terms of roads, of schools, and of fire stations. And it is a roadmap. It is not perfect. But it is a product that is a product of a lot of compromises throughout the county. And I think this is one of the most important things that the supervisors need to do, is to respect the integrity of the general plan and to not let developments outside of the envelope of that plan.
Jerry?
I'm a property rights guy, and the idea with the general plan, they downzone a lot of properties. I was at the Farm Bureau today, and I talked to a few farmers out there, and they basically had their property values devalued because of the general plan. So what had happened now is a lot of developers will come in on these devalued properties and try to buy up these properties and then try to put something in like Lilac Hills or Newland Sierra. So, and those projects are going to work their way through the system. But I think the general plan created this problem by downzoning a lot of properties, taking a lot of people's property rights away. I don't think that was a valid plan for a plan. I mean, if we did that as a city, we'd get hung. But the idea that the county did it, and these people out in the back country, since they don't have that very strong voice, pay the price for this. So no, I don't think the general plan was something that was beneficial to the backcountry landowners. It may have appeased some of the environmental community, but it didn't help the landowners much at all.
Okay. Jim?
Well, thanks. I also believe that the general plan was a land take in a lot of different reasons, and I think it's part of the reasons why we're having housing issues right now, and being able to put housing in. We've got people that live in Temecula or Hemet. Our firefighters, most of them all live up in Temecula area because we don't have the housing here. You got to remember the general plan is both general and a plan. It's not in stone, and it's allowed to be amended. And when these things are done, I mean, even when the counties was done, it was before Uber or Lyft or before Amazon, and all, you know, the new internet, you know, generation of all the shopping is done online. So there's been a lot of changes, and there has to be ability for some amendments to the general plan. And I think if the amendments are reasonable and if they bring something a positive to the community, then they should be allowed. So to say that everybody has to adhere exactly to the general plan is I think is out of the question. You have to have and be able to adjust to the times, and that's why there's actually within the general plan those amendments that can be made.
Okay, Michelle?
I think the general plan should generally be adhered to, but we need to leave flexibility for amendments when it's necessary. Things do come up. I do also believe that we need to be building our affordable housing near appropriate infrastructure, transportation corridors, and making sure that we have fire protection and other water services and things in place. So if we're making adjustments, we need to make sure that we have those services in place and that we're just not developing out there somewhere that's going to trap somebody and lead to a fire problem.
Okay. A proposed development like Lilac Hills sits alongside Interstate 15. That's a big piece of infrastructure. Doesn't that satisfy that requirement?
Well, it doesn't for a number of reasons. One of them is that the residents of Lilac Hills are not, or the future residents would not be exactly right next to Highway 15. In order to get out and to get in and out of Lilac Hills, you are dealing with two-lane roads, and the developer is not planning on developing the infrastructure to ensure that people can have safe egress in the next wildfire. And that is one of the biggest issues we have in the unincorporated county, which is developments that are dropped in places that are fundamentally unsuitable for having high density. If we're gonna have density, then we need to have the infrastructure that goes with it, instead of just putting the density there and then hoping, you know, playing ostrich with a head in the sand and hoping that somehow the roads and all will be improved in the future, because that's not what happens. And we are seeing it right in our community in Harmony Grove, with proposals to put hundreds of people who will be trapped in the next wildfire because the roads are just not designed for that sort of density.
Jerry?
Well, I think this is where my experience in land use probably would be a benefit. The idea that we've had developments here in Oceanside and we've required a lot of off-site mitigation, road improvement. So the idea when something goes out along the 15, that we can require that they improve the roads, not just go forward with the plan, it's all or nothing. You know, it's something that we work hand in hand with developers and builders with all the time. So take Via Astoria, they probably had, $20 million of offsite improvements that they had to do on roads that don't even connect with them. But since they impacted them, they had to do those improvements. So I think that's something we need to do. You know, when I first came down here, there was no I-15 at all. It was 395. And then as time went on, they put in 15. But right now, if you go out on the 15, 10 years ago, you listen to the radio, and Rancho Bernardo was where they started backing up at. Now they start backing up at Gopher Canyon because all those people moved out to South Riverside County, but they still work on the mesas. They still work in Rancho Bernardo. So forcing them farther out just makes environmental challenges greater.
Okay, Jim?
Well, I agree with you, Ken. I think where housing should go where the infrastructure exists, and that 15 piece of is a huge piece of infrastructure. The Lilac Ranch project, I think, if it comes back, it has to have, my criteria for housing projects are, it has to fit within the character of the community, it has to mitigate all of its impacts, and it has to provide the infrastructure necessary for the project. And if it's a general amendment plan or a general amendment, then it should actually provide additional infrastructure as well. So it helps the community members that are already living there. So I think projects have to come with the infrastructure that to support themselves and to support the community around them. So if it meets that criteria of blending in with the community and then also mitigating the impacts necessary and providing the necessary infrastructure, housing projects should be approved. And it's already along the 15 corridor at the 15 and the 76. Palomar College has a campus there. There's housing going in there, and I think it's a good fit. And the further we push people out away from San Diego County and out of San Diego County, the worse our traffic is going to be.
Michelle?
The Lilac Hills doesn't have adequate infrastructure the way it is right now, and in order for that project to go forward, I think that we would have to put that infrastructure in place and also put fire services out there.
In a related kind of question, Sandag is estimating that we will be 150,000 housing units short by 2050. Given the kinds of restrictions of the general plan, given the high cost of land in general, what do we do about our housing?
So I think you're referring to the new release last week of new housing data. So we went from, we had 325,000 units in the county, which was plenty to accommodate the expected growth, and Sandag has come up with a new data point which says that 525,000 units or so are needed. So the first thing I would like to point out is that historically Sandag has had an issue with accuracy of forecasts, both in terms of housing units and, as everybody knows, with Measure A, and the fact that the projections for tax revenues from Transnet were way off. So first, we need to make sure that these preliminary numbers are correct. Second of all, if they are in fact correct, then we need to do the same thing as the principles of the general plan are still valid, which is any new units should go near transit, away from near transit, near infrastructure, away from high fire zone. And that's how they should be accommodated.
Jerry?
Yeah, there was an article in UT about last August, September, that basically Dan McSwain, the author, said people that have houses don't want any more houses. They stop everything. We face that every day here at the city of Oceanside, just putting in infill projects that people in the neighborhood don't want housing. This idea that we're going to get millennials, that they're going to live in high-rise condos next to bus stations, is just not realistic. You know, the idea that the millennials want to live in the same type of houses that we grew up in. They want a house with a yard, someplace to have their children. They don't want to go down 25 stories and walk their kid to a tot lot. So the idea that we're going to have to build housing that they want, otherwise they're going to be gone. We're going to lose that millennial generation because they're going to be moving to Texas. They're going to be moving to Arizona and Nevada because they're going to get housing that they can afford in a place that they want to live. They're not going to do that. I know it's utopian to think, hey, we're going to force everybody into high density housing around transit stations, but people aren't going to buy those facilities or buy those houses.
Okay. Jim?
Well, housing is definitely an issue in San Diego County, and the Sandag numbers, I sit on the Sandag board, and we were just presented by the Housing Development Department of the state that said between 2021 and 2028, we have to provide 170,000 affordable housing units in San Diego County. Now, how that's going to get dispersed is yet to be told, but we are behind the curve on housing, and I think housing should go near where transit exists and near the infill projects within the cities where the amenities are. But the problem that we have is nobody wants it near them. Nobody wants additional housing. We just approved 220 housing units, townhouse types of units near the university in San Marcos, and we had residents collect 5,000 signatures to go ahead and try to stop that, and primarily because of the school overcrowding issue. So to provide the amount of housing that we need, it's going to be very difficult, and we're going to have to, as county supervisors, we're going to have to make the tough decisions on where they go and make sure they fit the housing fits certain criteria. But we only have so much space, and we do have the population is going to continue to grow. Housing is going to have to go somewhere. We can do it wisely. We can do it smartly. We can do it so it's safe from fires. We can do it so it has the infrastructure that it needs. It's just we have to have the understanding of the people in the county to know that we need more housing. If we keep pushing further away, like I said earlier, our traffic issues are just going to become worse.
Michelle?
We absolutely need to be building more affordable housing as well as more attainable housing. Affordable housing, we need to be building in density near transportation corridors. We need to make sure that we have services available, but we also need to build attainable housing for that first-time home buyer that will get them out of the rental market and into a home. Right now, most people in their 30s and 40s simply can't afford to buy that first home because we don't build modest housing, and we need to start building modest housing that will also affect and help with our homeless problem.
Okay, thank you. You're watching a special North County Roundtable program featuring candidates for the San Diego County 5th District Supervisor seat. We're going to take a short break and return with more questions for the candidates after a minute.
For over 30 years, KOCT has been a community media resource. KOCT exists because of viewers like you who want and need to stay informed about their community. Only KOCT provides local election coverage and live airing of government meetings. Support this public service by making a tax-deductible donation today. It's easy. Go to KOCT.org, click on the donate button, make a monthly or a one-time donation. Help us help you stay informed about North County. Support your hometown television station today.
Tips from Tri-City Medical Center. Try a new health class or support group. Classes are available each month and include CPR courses, Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, and stroke exercise, cancer support groups and programming, diabetes and meal planning classes, and a free fall prevention course for the elderly. Call 855-222-8262. Tri-City Medical Center. Advanced healthcare for you.
Welcome back to this special June primary edition of the North County Roundtable. I'm your host, Kent Davy, and tonight we're featuring candidates for the San Diego County 5th District Supervisor seat. Let's reverse the order or the method by which we're asking questions, and we'll do more of a rolling and start with Jerry Kern. Jerry, what will be your transportation focus and emphasis on rail, bus, bicycle, freeway expansion? Would you be supportive of Sandag bringing or putting another transportation bond on the ballot?
Well, if they don't lie to the people, that would probably be an advantage not to have another Measure A that was basically a fraudulent bond that was put on there. And at the end, they put all this stuff in there and it says, hey, vote for this, we'll give you that. And at the end of the day, it said, oh, we never really had the money for it anyway. So no, I think they need realistic transportation goals. I think expanding the coaster to have the double tracking between here and San Diego is vital. I think that's something that we do need to do. We need, better roads. We need just to repair the roads that we have. So I think all the transportation modes need to be covered. But when you get in the backcountry and try to get them to pay taxes, like a sales tax, to put extra trolley lines downtown San Diego, it doesn't benefit them. So the idea that the Measure A only gave 14% of the money to North County. The idea that we need 20% of that money in North County. So if we're going to pay the taxes, we need our fair share of that. So I think putting in roads, expanding, obviously 78 is of critical importance. That's the lifeblood of North County. So that would be my focus first, and then other things besides the roads.
Okay, Michelle?
I definitely agree that we need to expand our transit and fix and improve on our road system. We also need to improve mass transit as a whole with the goal of, cutting emissions and improving our environment and building more walkable neighborhoods so that we can get out of our cars.
Okay, Jim.
Well, thank you. I'm a freeway guy. I would like to see more roads, particularly on the 78. The 78 corridor is desperately needed work. I'm actually on the Sandag board, and I sit as the chair of this Transportation Commission. Last week, we just got $7 million to pay for an environmental impact report for HOV lanes on the 78 from Twin Oaks Valley Road that would run east and connect to the I-15 HOV lanes and go over the interchange there at the 78 and the 15. So hopefully we're getting some. We've got dollars for that plan in the works. We definitely need more. I'm trying to fight for dollars right now for an environmental impact report for the entire 78 corridor. San Marcos, we actually collect money from developers for the 78 interchanges, and we've got money for the Woodland Parkway interchange. We put $5 million towards a Woodland Parkway interchange to make sure that was in place when the new hospital got built in Escondido. I think we need more freeways, more freeway lanes. The 78 is the economic spine of this district, and it definitely needs to flow freely to transport our seniors, transport our students, transport our military people, and people just trying to get to and from work.
Okay, Jacqueline?
So I will disagree with my neighbor here in terms of widening the freeways. Every study has shown that when you widen freeway, you basically just have the exact same traffic on the new on the new expanded freeway, right? an elasticity of 1. So the expansion of freeway just leads to more congestion and more traffic. What we need instead is we need to really think forward in terms of what is it that we want San Diego County to look like 10, 20, 30 years from now? What is the future of transportation? And does it really have to be a single person in a single car clogging up the roads and emitting pollution? The answer to that is no. There's a lot of work that is being done, some of it right here in Carlsbad, in terms of smart mobility, in terms of using the technology of the future so that we can install infrastructure that will communicate with the vehicles of tomorrow to make our roads much more, which will resolve the issue of traffic. And I think that's the direction the county should invest in.
Okay, Michelle?
He's first.
Oh, I'm sorry. Say first question. I am getting confused here. Do you think the county's rural fire protection services are adequate? What needs to be done to protect us from wildfire?
I don't think that our services are adequate. I think we need to increase the number of fire departments and increase the number of fire personnel to really deal with the problem. We have a number of fires that have broken out in the last few years, and I don't believe that we have had the necessary resources to combat those fires. We've had to bring in outside resources, and I think that we need to improve on what we're doing as a county.
Okay, Jim?
I think the resources are adequate at this point in time, but there's always room for improvement. There's always new change. In 2013, we had the big Cocos fire, and in San Marcos, where we had about 800 fires burned, we had no loss of life, and only 5 structures actually burned to the ground, and those are ones that did not have the protection around them. The fire district, I think we learned a lot in 2003 when the first major fire came through, and there wasn't a lot of coordination between the fire departments, between CAL FIRE and all the different fire districts, particularly in the unincorporated areas. And we learned from that, and now all the fire departments in the different districts, they train together, so they know what to expect when another fire department shows up to help with their aid. There's been more helicopters added. There's been precautions with SDG&E that actually shuts down the power when the winds pick up and become very high. So I think the county has done quite a bit. I think it's adequate today. I think people feel safe. I think there's still the possibility of improvement, new technologies. I've heard of even the county using drones now, to bring in equipment and hoses to people out in the front lines instead of having to drive a truck all the way up there. So I think there's room for improvement, but I feel that people feel safe, and the fire departments have done a great job.
Okay. Jacqueline?
So I would have, as the only person on this table, around this table from the unincorporated county, I will have to say that many of us in the unincorporated county do not feel safe in terms of fire. The county of San Diego is one of the few counties that do not have in their charter the responsibility for fire. And what we have seen time and time again, so for example, during the Cocos fire in 2014, I happened to live right next to San Marcos, right next to San Alejo. And we had a situation where not only was Twin Oaks Road completely blocked and the people who lived in San Alejo Hills were unable to exit, but those of us who live in the backcountry, if you will, right next to it, were also unable to exit. And that is a major road, right? Twin Oaks is a 4-lane or 5 or 6 lane, and yet we were in a situation where we have videos of people with their families in the car unable to evacuate and calling 911 and panic. So no, I think we have a lot more to do in terms of fire protection, and that starts where it really starts where you allow the housing to go, where you allow the density to go. It's very important to make sure that should be the first and foremost criteria, to never allow any density where we are not sure that people can evacuate safely.
Okay. Jerry?
Yeah, the county has adequate supply of firefighters, and they can handle the fire. The example I know you can go back in the last decade and talk about a fire. I'd like to talk about the Lilac fire that just occurred last fall. The idea, mobilize quickly. We had a very good plan. The county and the local fire departments communicated greatly. You know, we had a command center here in Oceanside. No loss of life except where it started in the mobile home park. But along that river, They evacuated quickly. They put the resources where they needed them. There was coordination between the county and CAL FIRE, the Marine Corps, and the municipality fire departments. So we've learned a lot of lessons because of the fires we had, and I think we're adequately protected now. The only other thing that I would encourage people on that urban interface is defensible space. You know, that just can't be on the county. It's going to have to, if you live out in that urban area or that suburban area or rural area, you have to have defensible space around your property. That's, you know, you have to take some responsibility of your own.
Okay. Jim, should the County of San Diego be more involved in gun control issues in unincorporated areas? Should they consider whether they have a responsibility to permit shooting ranges?
I would imagine the county has the ability to permit gun ranges. We, in the city of San Marcos, we're just opening one up next month. So I haven't come across that, but I'd be willing to approve more gun ranges out in the unincorporated areas or in areas of the county, as I think people have a right to gun ownership, and I think they have a right to controlled carries or concealed carries as well. And I also think, you know, people having the opportunity to have the gun ranges available to them so they can learn to use their weapons safely and in a safe manner. I think that's encouraging. And so, you know, as far as the county controlling more, I think there are plenty of laws on the books for, you know, guns right now. It's just the enforcement it needs to be in place to make sure that, you know, the laws are enforced. And I think the county should actually, I think having more gun ranges would be an improvement towards gun safety.
Okay, Jacqueline?
So I don't know exactly what the regulations the county has in terms of guns in the unincorporated county. I do know that the county sheriff, I believe, does not allow for conceal and carry in the unincorporated area, and that is for a matter of safety. Because obviously when a sheriff comes up to a car, not knowing whether or not that person has a gun or not is a safety issue for our law enforcement folks. In terms of gun control more broadly, I grew up on a farm in France, and I grew up in, you know, hunting is a matter of culture, and everybody, you know, in our kitchen we had a number of we had the guns from the various grandfathers and so forth. But I really believe that the county needs to hold the line and make sure that guns are not used for things other than use such as hunting and skeet shooting and gun ranges and things like that. So to the extent that regulations could be put in place to limit the availability of other guns in the county, I would favor those.
Jerry?
Well, the CCW issue is just not a backcountry issue. The sheriff is the one that issues the CCW permits for all of the county. All the 18 cities have signed a memorandum of understanding that the sheriff's going to be the one that actually determines who gets CCWs. So even if you live in downtown San Diego, you still have to go through the sheriff's department. I think Sheriff Gore is reevaluating that, and I think we'll have some common sense to come out of that. I think it's pretty extreme now. But as far as shooting in the backcountry, you know, I hunt on Palomar Mountain during deer season. You know, I've never had a problem up there. The only thing that I would probably say, and I don't know if it's in place, but the county have some regulations, you know, like on wind event days, like the Santa Ana's come and say no shooting in certain areas because of the chance of wildfire. You know, just like when SDG&E on wind events closed down certain lines, I think they should have some rules about that. But other than that, I think it should be free for anybody to go out in the backcountry and go hunting on land that, the public land that they own. You know, that's the difference.
Okay, Michelle?
California has pretty comprehensive gun laws to begin with, and I do support having gun ranges. In fact, we do have one in Oceanside, and I haven't heard of any issue or problems surrounding that. However, with that said, I do not support assault rifles, and I do not support concealed reciprocity.
Okay. Jacqueline, do you think the county's funding of sheriff's deputies and the sheriff's department generally is adequate?
Well, if I were to go by the amount of sheriff resources we get in the unincorporated county, I would have to say no. I think we are served, for example, in our small community of Elfin Forest Harmony Grove, I think we are served from the San Marcos Sheriff's Station by, I believe, 4 officers that cover everything from Elfin Forest all the way to the backcountry. So it is very difficult, in fact, to get sheriffs to come when there are issues. Thankfully, there's not a lot of crime, but that is probably an area where resources could be increased, understanding, though, that the geography covered is definitely a challenge.
Okay. Jerry?
I think the Sheriff's Department has some challenges like any other police department. You know, we have trouble recruiting police officers in Oceanside, even though we're the best paid in the county. The one that's really under stress, though, is not so much the sheriffs, but it's probation. With these release laws that the state has come up with, our probation department got cut $20 million. They have more people they have to supervise. So I think if I was on the supervisor, I would really focus on probation and how we can get those numbers up and get there more people. I met with probation last week just to hear what their concerns are. And it's usually when you go to these bargaining groups, they all talk about, we want more money. They didn't talk about getting more money for themselves. They talked about getting more probation officers to spread out the workload. They are now, one probation officer is sometimes supervising 90 to 100 clients, I guess is what they call them. But that probation is under a lot more stress than sheriffs.
Okay.
I think the Sheriff's Department does have some challenges with addressing the amount of crime and the amount of people that are requesting their services. I also believe that we need to be beefing up our security as far as gang violence and gangs that are within the county, and also working with our youth to ensure that they're not leading into a lifetime of crime as an adult.
Okay. Jim?
Well, your question was, do you think the Sheriff's Department, I guess, law enforcement is adequate? And it definitely is adequate. Could it use improvement? I mean, you can always, everything can always use improvement. I mean, the Sheriff's Department and the Probation Department and all the folks that work in law enforcement as well. But City of San Marcos, we actually contract with the sheriffs. We've been contracting the sheriffs the entire time. I've been, I think, probably since the city began in the 1960s. We're very happy with their services. We feel our citizens feel safe. They get their call times, are within reason, and actually they do a great job of keeping our citizens safe. So, and we like the fact that we have shared services and that we don't have our own police department. But I do believe, we have to compensate these folks, adequately and make sure they get the pay and the pensions that they deserve. I look at their pensions for the police officers and for the sheriffs is almost like the GI Bill. If you're willing to put your life on the line like somebody is for their country as a veteran, they should have that GI Bill. Pensions should also apply for the make sure that our law enforcement officers have the pay and the pensions and the benefits to recruit new officers to that, because it's a tough job. Not everybody can do it, and I think there's always room for improvement. But I definitely feel our city is safe, and the sheriffs do a fantastic job.
Okay. Jerry, what's your position on cannabis and cannabis sale permitting of retail stores in the unincorporated area?
Well, last week, Oceanside City Council actually passed the cannabis ordinances. The idea that we've allowed cultivation in the ag zone only indoors, only in greenhouses. We've allowed some of the supply chain to go forward, distribution, manufacturing. We have held back on approving dispensaries. That's the hardest nut to crack. That's the one that people have the most consternation on. And what we've done is send that back to the police chief to come up with a plan to see how we handle that. 57% of the people in California voted for it, and 57% of the people in Oceanside voted for it, and that's partly reflective of the county. So we have to get out in front of this. The idea that the thing that I'm afraid of is that if we do not get out and drive this train and we want to stand on the tracks, it's going to run over us. Right now, there's initiatives percolating out there, and once it goes through the initiative process, we lose all control. So we need to control cannabis, and I think doing it, I would take some of the things I learned on an ad hoc committee for a year, and I would take those to the county.
Okay. Michelle?
I do strongly support cannabis. California passed laws regulating and making it legal for recreational as well as medicinal. And I think that we, like Jerry said, we need to get in front of it before the laws are dictated to us. I do support cannabis storefronts. I do support home delivery. I do support cultivation, and I think it's going to be a great crop for a lot of farmers and will give them the ability to increase their revenue when their other crops are not producing.
Okay, Jim.
In San Marcos, we banned the cultivation, manufacturing, and dispensing of marijuana. We did not, the law that was passed actually gave local jurisdictions the authority, the land use authority, to allow those uses. So when everybody kind of forgets that, the medical marijuana was passed, but yes, on the caveats that local jurisdictions had that capability over the land use. So I am adamantly against dispensaries in any neighborhood. I would not allow dispensaries in the unincorporated areas either. To me, nobody wants the dispensaries in their neighborhood. It's okay in your neighborhood, but not in my neighborhood. I think the dispensaries are actually an attractive nuisance. We have people that's sleeping in for the ones that have popped up in San Marcos, sleeping in their cars, defecating in the bushes, being too stoned to even drive or walk away, littering. To me, it's kind of the next buzz. People can always they can grow their own at their house, you can have it delivered, you can even sell it amongst yourselves as friends is all legal. But now to have dispensaries in neighborhoods, I think would be a downfall of a neighborhood. And even in the industrial areas where people have proposed dispensaries, those are family-run businesses and they don't want dispensaries either.
Okay, Jacqueline.
I support the ordinance that was drafted by the San Diego County Planning Commission. I think it was last year, right before we changed supervisors, which was something that allowed cultivation because our farmers need to diversify with the price of water going the way it is, and many of our farmers no longer being able to rely on their traditional crops. It's a legal crop. 57% of voters, as Jerry mentioned, have made it legal. There's no reason that our farmers should not have access to growing that as a crop. Second, if you don't have dispensaries, and what you have is a black market. The advantage of having a dispensary is that you have actual quality control, and that you know that the product that is being sold is being monitored, and it becomes a health issue if you have black market outfits which are retailing a product that will then make your customers sick. And third, we also need law enforcement so that we can make sure that those black market outfits disappear as quickly as they come about. So you need enough dispensaries in the unincorporated county, which is a very large area, so that you have enough to kill the black market product.
We have just about enough time to do one more round of questions if the answers are fairly short. Michelle, I'd like to ask you what you think of the community enhancement and neighborhood reinvestment programs, which some people in the press have called slush funds, supervisor slush funds in the past.
I think that the supervisory slush funds, if I understand your question correctly, I think what you're asking about is increases in wages. And I think I'm not really following what the question is, to be honest with you.
Well, I'm just going to go ahead and pass it in.
That's fine.
Well, I think the slush fund is actually a misnomer. A lot of things are done in the county with a broad brush, and it's particularly the general plan for one. And so, quite frankly, it's $2 million each district gets for discretionary money in their district for their needs. I think that should be $5 million for each district. It should be raised because you got a lot of different needs in the urban areas as you do from the unincorporated areas. And I think that money can be at arm's length, not be political, and actually go to good uses within the district.
Okay, thank you.
The community reinvestment funds have been used for some good purposes, such as for charities and in our own area for paying for closing of roads and so on and so forth. They do present the danger that the grand jury had found a few years ago when it was investigated, that it can be used to sort of buy influence from the communities or the folks that you are lavishing these funds on. So I think it's important to keep it at arm's length, as Jim said.
Thank you.
As long as the money is spent wisely, the idea that I've gone through these processes, and I helped Women's Resource Center, and I've helped Boys and Girls Clubs, and I've helped other entities apply through the county. They take it to the Board of Supervisors. The Board of Supervisors approve the spending. So the idea with the adequate thing, the problem is with unincorporated areas, they don't have that tax base that the cities have. So that money that's spent out in the unincorporated areas, like for libraries, that they don't have the money to generate to build a library. So the counties have to build these libraries. So I think it's a good program. Obviously, it's subject to abuse, but I think that all in all, it's done very well.
Okay. We now need to move on to take some brief closing remarks from each of the candidates. And I think we start this time with Jim.
Oh, okay.
Well, this has been a great opportunity to speak with you, and I think the county has a great many assets. We've got high-tech, biotech, we've got agriculture, we've got mountains, beaches, deserts in this district. We've got hospitals, we've got airports, we've got a major university and 2 community colleges. We have all of the aspects for success, and I would like to be part of that success and make sure that the next generation has the jobs, has the housing, and has the infrastructure that it needs to be successful. And I think a collaboration between the government, between education and business is a recipe for success. And I want to be part of that and be honored to serve as your county supervisor.
Thank you.
I want to thank KOCT and Kent for this debate. And I want to say that we again have really an opportunity to change the direction of the county. The way the county has been going for the last 24 years with the current incumbents is a direction to turn San Diego into Los Angeles, really. And we need to think about some more modern ways and some more visionary ways to envision our future as it relates to development and transportation and water usage. These far-flung developments will result in fire risk. They will result in water shortages when the rest of you have to see your lawns die and yet new building permits are being issued. And they will result in more congestion. So I am running specifically to try to take the influence of money out of politics as it relates to development. I think I'm the only candidate here that is not taking money from developers, and I would be grateful for your vote.
Thank you, Jim.
Go to kernforsupervisor.com. I'll get that out there right away. I'd like to thank the panel. I think everybody had some very good answers. You got to realize that the 5th district is 1,800 square miles. It goes from here in Oceanside all the way out to Borrego Springs. It goes from Rancho Santa Fe to the Orange County line. It has 620,000 people, 300,000 voters, 80,000 veterans. And we really didn't get into veteran services here, but the county does a lot for veterans. I'm a veteran. Mayor Desmond's a veteran. So the idea that we're focus on those veterans issues too. Like I said, there's just so much stuff that we have to deal with at the county, and I'd like to be your supervisor because I think my background in dealing it with Oceanside, the largest full-service city in North County, has given me the experience and the ability to actually go to the county level and serve you well. Thank you.
Michelle.
Thank you for watching, thank you for your vote, and thank you for caring about San Diego. My name is Michelle Gomez, and my website is michelleforsupervisor.com. I would like to be your supervisor because I generally think that we need to do more for health and human services. I think that we need to do more for our veterans as well. I've been awarded 4 times by the Obama administration for doing work and service for our military families and our veterans. I do a lot of work with veteran families as well as the Commission on the Status of Women and Girls, combating human trafficking, domestic violence, and homelessness. Again, my name is Michelle, and thank you for watching.
This brings our program to a close. Thank you all candidates for coming and appearing with us tonight. Thank you for your willingness to serve. Thank you for watching this special edition of North County Roundtable. KOCT will also be playing programs featuring the candidates for the California 76 Assembly seat, candidates for the 49th Congressional seat. All these June primary election programs will be shown right up to the election date in June on Cox Cable in Oceanside, AT&T Uverse across the county, and as video on demand on our new website, koct.org. Be informed about your community by watching North County Roundtable. Thanks, and we'll see you next time.
KOCT program underwriters are not affiliated with the City of Oceanside. This program is underwritten in part by Waste Management of North County in Oceanside. We are dedicated to serving customers and community as a safe, comprehensive service provider, a good corporate citizen, and a responsible environmental steward. Think green. Think Waste Management.